Hey guys, your old pal CHH, Cliff Macmillan. Today we got him for an hour and change. I asked him pretty much everything you guys wanted me to, or at least I tried to. But I'm just going to tell you something right now before this video gets started. You're going to hear Cliff basically say this, and I'm not going to straight out say it out of respect. But Marcus Nispel, he directed Friday the 13th, the remake. I'm pretty sure he directed something else in the 2000s that was a remake. I'm pretty sure there was a prequel that came out a few years later from that movie. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's video. We have got the one and only Cliff Macmillan back again. Cliff, I'm already noticing this is a different camera angle from last time.
Yeah, I had to get rid of my big office. It was just too much per month. So this is all my movies had to come home. So they're here in another room.
Oh, so that was an office that you had?
Yeah.
Well, I'm seeing some Friday the 13th. I got to see your base motel light and everything, and I'm digging it.
Yeah, it's not as cool as your room. Yours is makes mine look like nothing.
Well, you know, I mean, this is every other house and every other room in the house is the wife. So I just pack everything I can into this one.
I know the feeling. Yeah.
Cliff, I just want to get a sense to know you a little bit more, because last time we did talk about your life and your honestly your journey and everything, which I thought was fascinating. I just want to ask you a random question before we kind of get going. Yeah. Pepsi or Coke?
Oh, Coke. Yeah.
Really?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you know any Pepsi guys in your life?
No, and my wife can't stand it, so sometimes we can't go to restaurants when they have Pepsi. So.
Oh, so it's a no-go.
Yeah, it's a no-go.
Oh man. I'm not asking you to get specific about where you live, but you're in California, right?
Yeah, in Los Angeles, about an hour from LA.
Do you guys have not Taco Bells, but I think it's called like Del Taco or something like that? Is that place the real deal?
It to me, it's better than Taco Bell. Some would argue that, but at least when you eat at Del Taco, it seems a little bit more like real food, you know, and not burnt plastic.
I've always wanted to eat at one of those. I'm in Louisiana, man. We have Whataburger. Yeah, we have that. That's our thing, I guess. Which I'm right by Texas, so I'm 35 minutes from Texas, so it's basically Texas. So yeah, I guess that's our claim to fame.
I don't think we have any Whataburgers out here.
No. So Cliff, man, the last time we talked, you were already with Arrow Video and everything, and we talked all about your history with Scream Factory. And I gotta say, like, I'm a little nervous about this one because that interview, people loved it so much, and they still had 1,000 questions. So I don't know. We're gonna have to try to live up to that last one and make this one as awesome.
I'll try to do my best.
It's on me. It's not on you. So Cliff, when you told me you became an acquisitions guy for Arrow Video, and that was your sole job before, you said you were wearing a ton of hats at Scream Factory, and that definitely burnt you out. You know, I was thinking about this with being an acquisition guy. Isn't that kind of like being a reverse salesman? Instead of selling, you're buying?
Well, I think it's actually a little both, because when myself and my other two acquisition friends at Arrow, when we find something, we have to try and sell that to the sales department to get them to be on board to release it. So we really are selling it, trying to sell it to our own people. And, sometimes your picks aren't quite what the sales department wants. So, it's really being a buyer, and it's also being a salesperson.
Well, that's interesting. You said that you have to kind of sell it to your own sales department.
Oh yeah, it was the same way at Shout Factory too.
I guess, let me ask you this, Cliff. I assume everybody that works at a company like a Scream Factory, like an Arrow, they're all movie obsessed lovers. Is that the case or no?
I think there are more film lovers at Arrow, which was really nice. I think Sometimes you would bring up a movie to the folks at Shout Factory, and they're like, "What? I don't know that." But at Arrow, it's like everybody usually knows exactly what you're trying to sell them. Yeah.
Cliff, can you kind of tell the people what it would be like the first title with Arrow that kind of has your stamp on it, has like something you could say that I was heavily involved in that, or I helped make that happen?
Well, I closed the Warner deal, so titles like Jason X and Jason Goes to Hell, which come out next week, were two. Swordfish, Clash of the Titans. Those were titles I acquired, but I worked on Jason X and Jason Goes to Hell mainly because I had already done them before. So they're probably the first two that I worked on as a producer. So I'm producing again, not just acquiring.
Cliff, I gotta say, man, and I think I actually do speak for a lot of people. I think it was fairly evident. I mean, when we did that interview last year, you definitely had my hopes up because you kind of gave me the sense of like kind of be ready because Arrow's gonna start putting some stuff out that we wouldn't expect. I mean, you probably saw the reception of people being like, "Wait a minute. Whoa, whoa, whoa." I mean, you couldn't understand how when Friday the 13th, the remake, was announced, which technically, I believe home video-wise, distribution-wise, that is that more so that's Arrow. I mean, that's New Line Warner Brothers, right? That's not a Paramount thing.
Yeah, it's New Line. Yeah.
I mean, Cliff, I mean, I thought it was like it looked fake at first because it was so out of left field.
Yeah.
Can you kind of break down for me when you put a movie out like that? One of the questions I got, and people ask this not necessarily to me, but like when I talk about it or I discuss it on my channel, a lot of things I hear is, "Where's the Blu-ray with that? Where's the Blu-ray with that?" Now, just the little talk I had with you, I felt like I was able to understand a lot more. I'll tell you what I thought it was, and you can please elaborate. You got a license for a 4K disc.
Yeah. The first Warner deal that I did at Arrow was originally a Shout deal. So that should answer a lot of the questions, and that's why Jason X and Jason Goes to Hell is in there, because at Shout we had the Blu-ray. But when we signed the deal with them as an Arrow, we couldn't include the Blu-ray because those rights are still with Shout Factory. So that's why it's a 4K disc only.
There you go. And I just got to ask you this: out of the three, the remake, Jason Goes to Hell, and Jason X, which one do you think overall is like the best bang for your buck? I can tell you what I think it is as a fan.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's Jason X. I mean, it's I rewatched it the other night, and it definitely looks better than the transfer that we did at Shout Factory, because at that time they were telling us there was no negative or something like that. So, but it's such a low budget movie with such terrible visual effects, even for its day. I think they're pretty awful, but I think it's the most fun of the three. Yeah.
Let me ask you this, Cliff. You said there was no negative. Was the way that worked? It was shot on film. They digitized it, put the effects in, and then basically filmed it, and you were able to get that final.
Yeah, they outputted it to film so that they could make prints and stuff like that. So right. Yeah, that's basically what happened. So that's why when you watch it, I mean, some scenes look really great because they were actually shot on film, and then other scenes look very soft because they have some sort of special effects with them. That's nothing we could really fix. That's in the film. It is a very low budget movie, so there's only so much you can do. I've seen some people think the transfer is great. Some people don't think it's great. It's like, you do the best with what you got. And, that film is never going to look like it was shot yesterday.
Yeah. Well, I definitely think that, of course, the 4K is, I mean, if somebody asks me what's the best way to watch it, I was so happy with those. as a fan, I just want to tell you, because I mean, you work for the company. I don't think you'd be mad either way. For me, I loved the remake release you guys did so much out of the three, because you guys got Marcus to talk about this movie, and for me, I felt like there was this huge. I learned a lot. Number one, like the fact that he had to reshoot the entire opening sequence because the girl got fired, that lost all his time on the film. There's this notion I hear all the time about he was checked out of the movie, and he just didn't want to do it at a certain point. I never heard him say that, so I thought those interviews were absolutely fantastic on that. That's one of my favorite Arrow releases you guys have done, is the remake, and I'm a big fan of that film as well.
Yeah, I appreciate it a little bit more now, but there's some things that I don't particularly like about it. But yeah, he was great. I don't believe we had him on the Shout Factory release, so it was great that he wanted to be involved in it. And we did another movie with him recently, so yeah, and he worked quite a bit on that and approved the master and everything. But yeah, he was great.
Okay, Cliff, stop.
I'm not saying anything other than that. I probably have already got myself into trouble.
Cliff, hold on. Okay. You know what? I'm gonna give a pregnant pause to that. I'm gonna leave it at that. But here's what I want to say. I'll respect that. Let me go back really quick. Now I know this interview is kind of all over the place, Cliff, but
no, it's
like I said, people loved the interview that we did, the first one, and I felt the obligation to kind of let my viewers know, hey, Cliff has agreed to come back on the channel if you guys have questions. And one of the things, and this is because we're talking about the Fridays and everything that you guys just did. One of the questions I got asked 1,000 times over is, we call them chunky boxes. We don't know what the proper term is for those kinds of releases. I always guessed. I said I thought that maybe the license to do these films would be that specific that you could only really. It's not. Okay, so can you? Is there an answer to that?
Yeah, those boxes are often called rigid cases, which is, it's probably what the printer calls it. But yeah, I mean, as you can guess, they're more expensive, and I think we have like a tier system at Arrow where if something is termed as essential, it might not get the rigid case. If it's exceptional, it might not get that. But essential titles all get the rigid case, and it comes down to economics. If we're going to sell enough units, we'll do it. And it also comes down to how much we think we can put into a title. And then it's also comes down to how many other titles do we have in rigid cases, because it does take extra work and extra time. So the $3, titles are taking up a lot of time, because that's 3 releases in rigid cases. So it kind of comes down to that as well.
Fair enough. And I'm not challenging you by any stretch. No. I'm just, like I said, I'm trying to speak for me and a lot of my audience. I think a lot of us are kind of like, it's Friday the 13th. There's millions of fans.
No, I would prefer it, but it comes down to the sales department and what they think they can sell. And they sold extremely well. So I think looking back, maybe we would have done it differently. But like you said, I think some of the titles in that first Warner deal, the folks at Arrow was going like, this isn't our bag, this isn't something that we normally would do. So it's been fun to see, they've sort of, embracing it now, because the titles do sell well, and that's, why we picked those titles up at Shout Factory.
Cliff, let me ask you this. Is there a, obviously we saw the remake come out first. You would think, again, a lot of us from the outside, we always assume things, which I know is probably annoying to a guy like you, but I think a lot of people would be like, why did the remake, that's the newest film, why didn't they put out the other ones too? Is it in terms of getting material? Why did the remake come out first out of the 3?
Well, yeah, the whole Warner deal, there was a lot of people online going, why are you starting, with these awful titles? Well, it takes, first of all, they're awful to you. They're not necessarily awful to everybody else. Um, they were the easiest ones to put out first because they weren't shot on film. They were digital. So when you have a digital master or a digital intermediate, you would upres that to 4K. So it's a quick process. It doesn't take a lot of time. But for Jason Goes to Hell and Jason X, we went back to the negative. So, a lot of the really awesome titles that we have coming from Warner Brothers, are taking a lot more work because we are going back to the negative and, making the transfers as best we can.
Excellent.
And so that was the same, when we did Wrath of the Titan and Clash of the Titan, which I don't know why people don't like those movies. They're fun, but so be it. But, those were also digital titles, so they were very easy to put out. So, yeah.
Staying on the Warner titles that have come out so far, another one that I thought, Cliff, I want to ask you this. Let me ask. Let me compliment you on the trick or treat. Trick or treat. It's not Sammy Kerr. It's interesting, Cliff. Like for me, I don't know if when you, as a producer, I don't know if you did work on that release or not, but as a producer, I felt like your priority with a release like that were people that already own this movie probably 2 or 3 times, because it seems like as of late, especially with a lot of these titles, there's some, for me, it's just like, I'm a special feature guy and I love interviews and those documentaries and things like that. And I feel like there's been a certain amount of emphasis put on that. Is that something you've been conscious of like, I'm selling this movie to people that probably already own it? Is that something you keep in mind with stuff like that, or not really?
No, I think, for every title, we have been trying to add something new to it. Sometimes there's been so much done that there really isn't a whole lot more you can do with it. When we did Trick or Treat at Shout, I, was kind of rushed, and I had another producer come in to do the work, and, we really didn't get any of the cast. And so, it was important doing it this time to try and, get some of the cast. But, lots of times everybody's working, and so it's really hard to get people. And now, and I think, people don't like this, but, I think everybody is moving more to Zoom interviews, and I know the quality isn't as great as being able to shoot the person, but when it comes to trying to get people that are in other countries and who just, it would be expensive to get a cameraman there, you're probably going to see a lot more Zoom interviews. I'm working on a title now where all the cast are in another country, so it would just be very expensive to try and shoot them. I mean, you could look for a cameraman locally, but Zoom is probably the way a lot of us are going, just because it's very easy to do.
Oh, sure. I think most people would understand that. I mean,
Yeah.
most rational people. Some people you can never please, but you know that very well. What was I just about to ask? I had a question about. Going back really quick, and again, I'm just trying to cover a lot of the bases that people
Sure.
have about the Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
You guys, especially on Jason X, even Jason Goes to Hell as well. I correct me if I'm wrong. If it was on the Shout Factory disc, it's on the Arrow discs in terms of Jason. In terms of Adam Marcus's interviews growing up at the Cunninghams. It's the amazing Jason X documentary, which is fascinating. And I love Sean Cunningham in that. Do you have to deal with Scream Factory with stuff like that?
Yeah, luckily I still know a few people over there. So yeah, we do have to license those interviews from them. because they own them until their license expires. And then the rights would go back to Warner Brothers. But yeah, they still have the license. So yeah, we do have to go to the people. It's the same with other titles. You know, we just go to whoever created them and try and sometimes the producers own them. So there's another title I'm working on now where I didn't have to go to Shout. I had to go to Who Shot the interviews instead to license them from them. So it just depends on who really owns it.
That was kind of going to answer my next question, because I always assumed that all the extra feature stuff is I don't know if freelance is the right word to use. Like, in essence, Michael Felsher is a guy that has his deal. He goes and shoots stuff for this company, and then I'm assuming they buy the product that Michael Felsher, I'm just using him as an example, does, and then they have the rights to that. And that was going to be my next kind of follow-up question, but it sounds like you answered it. It just could be different circumstances.
Yeah, no, usually if you're the company and you are funding the extra feature, it would be yours to own. But in the end, everything goes back to whoever the studio or the producer of the film, if you get them, from an individual producer. So yeah, in every studio contract, everything that we do goes back to them at the end of the term.
Okay, awesome. All right, Cliff, I'm gonna try to get through some of these in somewhat of a comprehensive order. Let me ask you this to prerequisite this question. I just want to give the company their flowers when I talk about some of my favorite releases. I have it right over there. It was my favorite release of, I believe it was 2023, maybe 24, but most likely 2023. So I don't know if you were involved in this at all, but the Enter the Video Store box set. Did you have anything to do with that?
No, well, that was before me. I was a fan, and I, ordered that on the day it was announced. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I do love that, and I mean, as somebody that I'm critical of him because he's kind of a swindler, but I'm always going to be a diehard Charlie Band fan. He's like, I don't know if you're a wrestling fan at all, but he's like the Paul Heyman. He just, that's what he is. I love him for it. But my whole point of this is, yeah. I love his films. I always try to talk about them on my channel as often as I can. Now Umbrella seems to be trying to do a lot of their titles, and for me, I keep saying to myself, well, last year I was like, well, surely I can't wait for Enter the Video Store too. I mean, they're gonna get, maybe they'll do this time. I'm still waiting for a volume 2. I mean, is that something that you guys are? What can you tell me, if you can tell me anything?
Maybe.
Okay. If I understand, and I won't try to. Another thing people were noticing too was you guys kind of made a lot of wind with, I don't know. I could tell you from my perception what I thought it was. You guys kind of just announced a bunch of titles. You snuck out a bunch of stuff. You're somebody that's pretty keen to what's going on online. Is that almost a way to try to curtail some of the other kind of pages that kind of just announce your stuff before you do? Or is it just, let's have fun and to get people excited? Like, what's the motive there, if there is one?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. I think it's just to being that they're not necessarily new titles to 4K. I think it was just a fun way for marketing to let people know what's, coming out, this year and then in 2026. Not all of those are coming out this year.
And that makes sense too, because I think when I did talk about that, I thought a lot of them were Kinos in America. Let me ask Cliff, speaking of that, you said that a lot of stuff, okay, you obviously live in America. Your big deal right now is, you're talking about this huge deal you've got with Warner, which, I mean, people have definitely been excited. There's a lot of speculation about this, but as an acquisitions guy, I mean, do you focus on just American titles for Arrow, or do you have a lot of say in what goes on in? Because I mean, the perception is Arrow is a huge like European company, right? I mean, do you do acquisitions for the UK and stuff like that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there are certain titles in the Warner deal also that are UK only titles because Warner doesn't have the US rights, or somebody else had them. So no, I'm acquiring for the UK as well, and yeah, I don't just do American studio titles. Like a chat, I've done a few deals with Fortune Star, which is bringing us titles this year and next year. Also, I've done like 2 or 3 deals now with Toei, so there'll be a lot more Japanese content this year and next year. Um, so yeah, I'm not
Okay.
just focused on the major studios, but that's where I have a lot of my sources and things like that, or with the major studios.
Cliff, let me ask you this, in 2025, I mean, this is something that's talked about. I mean, it's been talked about probably since the like 2013, 14, like the death of physical media, the decline of physical media. Um, do you feel that at all working for a company that does physical media?
I mean, our physical media is stronger than it ever has been. I think there are a lot more younger people getting into collecting physical media. So I don't think it's going to go away. I think it's going to continue to do well. I think the studios don't um, like physical media because you have a lot of costs that go into the creation. You also have to manufacture inventory, and you have to worry about having excess inventory on a title if it doesn't sell well. So to them, they'd rather just have their own channel or sell it to another channel. But I think you see more and more labels coming out as well. So I think physical media is good. I don't think it's ever going anywhere. I think, it's going to be more of an online business, which is what it's sort of, migrated to recently, with people like Target and Best Buy
Best
giving
Buy,
up
yeah.
on the format. But, Target also replaced the video section with LPs, and LP sales are down. So, at some point they'll probably replace that again. And so who knows? Maybe you'll see video back in and retail again at some point. At least, thank God Walmart is still embracing it, in Barnes and Noble. But, in Walmart, you never know when it's going to be on the shelf. So it's sort of a game of going there constantly, hoping
Well,
it's out on the shelf.
you speaking of Walmart, I mean, you're not referencing actual Arrow titles, are you? I mean, do you
No,
guys?
no, I'm just talking about the business in general. But I mean, what was kind of funny was, all of the boo-hooing over Wrath of the Titans and Clash of the Titans. People thought, why did you pick those titles? Ugh. It sold out. And we actually had to start creating another SKU, the non, rigid case version, because the first pressing was sold out before it really ever hit the shelf. So, people have to realize there's all sorts of consumers out there. There's the
Mhm.
hardcore cult people, but there are also people that enjoy mainstream films and enjoy movies like that. And to me, I thought they were great titles, for somebody to put on their home theater system and show it off. So, there are those people as well that, enjoy the whole experience in their own home theater.
And yeah, I got that box set as well. I can't remember if it was that release or if it was one right before it or after it. But I believe it had like an actual slipcase over the box.
Yeah.
Is that something that's going to be just a standard going forward with a lot of those deluxe releases?
Yeah, I think so. I think it helps protect the rigid box from getting damaged. And so that's like the real reason that's on there, is to, I mean, you hear all the time people get damaged stuff. And I just took a disc back to Amazon to return, just because, it got, you know, destroyed in the trip. So, we are trying everything that we can do to make sure the product gets to you in good shape. So I
Hmm.
think that slipcover is one of them. We've also, our parent company put in a huge distribution center. So we are now fulfilling our own orders from our own distribution center, and
Oh wow.
every order that I've gotten recently has been perfectly packed. Nothing has been damaged. So um, I think the days of, I've seen it online where people complaining about our shipping, but I think you'll see it's changed quite a bit recently.
That's good then. Another title. This is not something somebody just asked,
Yeah,
but I of course want to mention this. I assume this is in your time frame, and I believe this was Warner Brothers. Uh, Demolition Man.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, Cliff, that came out of left field.
Yeah, I mean it's absolutely not something that Arrow probably would have done before I joined them. But
Tell
I
me
mean,
that's sold out, right? It was Demolition
oh,
Man.
it that one did sell out before it ever hit the shelf. We were already doing the manufacturing the single disc case version before the other one even came out. Yeah.
You got to be walking around with your head held high at the office when stuff like this happens.
No, I'm just happy to have joined a really good company. Not to take anything away from Shot Factory because they are a great company too, or Shot Studio. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty awesome time right now. Yeah.
When you get a title like that, you have to forgive me because I don't remember. Were you involved on the special features? Because I remember watching some special
No.
features with the. But just out of curiosity, like, do you just automatically assume like there's no way we're getting any? We can't afford 10 seconds with Stallone to talk about this. Is that something you assume, or do you always have like some sort of optimistic feel like maybe we can get Sly for something?
No, I already had experiences with him when I was at Shot
Really?
Factory, and
Was that on Nighthawks or?
no, was Cobra. Um, No, he did, and when he especially didn't want to talk about that movie because there was so much, talk about what was going on when that film was being made. But no, I mean, I don't even know that we tried. Um, and recently I'm producing a title with a major star, and we went to him to see if he was interested, and he surprisingly said yes, and we were like, oh my god. And then those awful fires happened in LA, and he had to evacuate, and he left the state, and so in the end we didn't get him. But
Mm.
it's weird, sometimes people are game, and there are other times where people just don't want to talk about a particular movie because maybe it wasn't their finest moment, or it wasn't a great experience for them.
Just out of curiosity, when you said Stallone did want to talk about what happened on the movie set, were you referencing Cobra or were you
Yeah,
referencing
Cobra.
Demolition Man?
Yeah, Cobra.
Okay, I remember some crazy story, but it might have been Stop on My Mom Will Shoot that I'm thinking of. So
Yeah, no,
something
well,
about Stallone getting a blowjob where he still had a mic clipped on him still, and the audio team still heard him moaning and groaning in his trailer. But that could
I
have been
didn't
a.
know that story, but yeah, I mean, yeah. I talked to some of the other actors from Cobra, and it was funny. They were very diplomatic.
Speaking of Cobra, I mean, again, we're seeing titles lately go from one company to another. I mean, I'm not complaining. I love Cobra. I love the film. I'm a big Stallone mark. I'm a huge fan of him, so I'm happy. It's funny. A lot of times when I do these random videos on titles, not too long after that, randomly they'll get an announcement. So I was super happy to see Cobra coming up from you guys in 4K. I mean,
Yeah.
but that's not Warner Brothers. That's got to be like MGM or something, isn't
No,
it?
it's Warner.
Okay, I thought that was a Canon film. I could be confusing that with Over the Top, maybe.
No, it is a Canon film. There are certain titles that they own, like Warner owns Over the Top. They own Cobra. They own a lot of smaller titles that like not American Ninja, but American Samurai. I think it is with Doug Bradley or something. I don't know. Yeah, they Cobra and Over the Top and Masters of the Universe, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm sure people saying that out loud, people are already wondering, like, you guys got to put out. I think everybody wants a Masters of the Universe in America. I
Yeah.
mean, you know,
I actually had the rights to it when I was at Shout Factory, and then there was all that talk about the director of that film for a short period of time, where he was on the naughty list, and so we actually didn't put it out because we didn't want any blowback from the fact that the director was sort of in a hot seat.
that reminds me of something. Now I'm only asking you this for your recollection of it at the time, but you mentioned that. That kind of brings me back to when Shout Factory, Scream Factory put out the Jeepers Creepers movies.
Yeah. Yeah, nobody was happy with me when I licensed those movies. But the thing is, look, he's a creepy guy. There's no doubt about that. He also did his time, in prison. Would I want to, have dinner with him? No. But the real truth is that there's a huge fan base for those movies, and we put them out. They sold very well. We even got a 2-pack of them into Walmart of all places, which sold incredibly well. So I try and separate the fact that this is the real story, and it's terrible, but at the same time there are fans that want good copies of Jeepers Creepers, so we did them, and they did really well.
Oh, I bet you they did well. I mean, the first one to me is it's a classic.
Yeah, I got heat for the Roman Polanski movie The Tenant too, and then I had to tell people, like, look, he's a creep. I would, never want to be in the same room with you. But The Tenant is a great movie. So why would we not put it out, because of what he did in his personal life?
Mm-hmm. And if people don't want to buy it, they don't have to buy it.
Absolutely.
That being said, though, at this point in time, do you think anybody would ever put out Jeepers Creepers on 4K or even go for it?
That's a good idea. I might have to steal your idea.
Well, I mean, Cliff, I'm not trying to convince you. This is me, and I feel like I'm probably with you. Agree with you. Nobody wants to talk to Victor Salva or have dinner with him, but there's a lot of people that worked on those movies that follow the rules of the law of the land and are good people. And people, Justin Long has a massive fan base, and I think people can separate that from Victor and enjoy the film.
And when you don't do something like that, I think you were mentioning it, is you're not only punishing him, but you're punishing the actors who won't get residuals because the title's not coming out.
Well, I think it's important you just said that.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think about everybody else. There are 3 movies that I'm going to acquire soon that are, people are going to be mad because of one of the actors in it, but why should we, not, enjoy these movies and the incredible cast that is in the movie aside from this one person? It's just, I get it, but, I just think it's a shame to punish the movie and everybody else who was in it just because of this one person.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree, and for the people that doesn't work for them, I think you have the right not to buy whatever that is.
Absolutely.
There's a lot worse things going on in this world than Cliff Macmillan putting out a movie with a.
Absolutely, I hope so.
I'll being serious though, Cliff. One question. I mean, you're probably just gonna look at me and not say anything, and I totally get it if you will. I think a lot of people were aware some way, form, or fashion that there were going to be these. I mean, you understand that there's these sites that kind of, I don't know who they're talking to or how they're talking to them, but they kind of say, hey, Arrow's going to be putting out this and this. A lot of them at the time, or at least I say a lot of them, a couple of them at the time were kind of lumping Freddy versus Jason into this. And I think some people were like, where's the announcement for Freddy versus Jason? That's not Paramount.
Yeah,
I mean, it makes sense for you guys to put it out. I mean,
no, absolutely. But I think, as been mentioned on the boards and stuff, Warner is doing a Nightmare on Elm Street box set, and I imagine it's going to be in there. Yeah, I'd like to put it out, but I've been turned down every time I've asked.
that's interesting. I mean, because Cliff, you've seen, I'm sure, online that there's this overseas box set that Zavi's listed for Elm Street, but it's only 1 through New Nightmare. That's what the description says.
Oh, I didn't hear that. That does make sense. Maybe they are leaving it out. I guess I'll just have to ask for it again.
I hope you're kind of messing with me. I guess we'll see.
No, seriously, no. I will ask again for it, because if it's not going to be in the box set.
Are you saying that you've already? I mean,
I've asked for it many times. Yeah.
And they kind of just say, well, you can do Jason X and Jason Goes Down.
No, it's just more. A lot of times the studios like to use the term active franchise. So, and it's what Universal told me for like 4 or 5 years. Every time I asked for Child's Play, they said, no, it's an active franchise. We're making movies. We got a TV series. And eventually I was able to convince them that, people that are buying, the Shout Factory version of the Child's Play sequels probably already has your box set. They just want a version with extras and a new transfer. So, it's not going to hurt your sales. And so that's the way I get them. Yeah.
And one last thing about that. Again, I understand that maybe it's okay to talk about because it's not like another company can take a Warner deal from you if you have a deal with them. But I think there's a lot of and I'm guilty of this too. There's a lot of assumption and speculation that another one that would make total sense would be the Elm Street kind of remake, because I kind of feel like Warner, again, all the stuff I see is this Elm Street collection. There's no Cliff. I am nobody, but I do have a couple people that have talked to me in private DMs and that have said, hey, Rachel Talalay is remastering Freddy's Dead right now. Hey, Jack Shoulder's working on, and I'll ask, what about Freddy versus no. What about the remake? No, that's not going to be. They're not. Warner doesn't care about the remake.
Well, I mean, you're not a nobody, but if you were, we wouldn't be talking, right? And yeah, I mean, those remasters that Rachel and Jack are doing are absolutely going to be in the Warner box set. So that's why that's being done. But man, I don't know. I don't particularly like the Nightmare remake, but that wouldn't stop me putting it out just because I don't like a movie. That's that's dumb. But I imagine if we announced it, everybody would be like, "Oh, that movie's a piece of shit," it's that kind of thing. But
it would sell out, Cliff. It would sell out.
Okay, it'll go.
You know
on my next Warner list.
I'm gonna get creamed if I don't ask about this. And again, I understand if you can't answer it, but I'm trying to not be too much of a punk to my audience. Don't answer. You don't have to say anything to this. Let's just assume that you were to put out another Marcus Nispel movie. There's another movie that came out in 2006 that might have the same kind of title.
Who you froze for a second?
Sorry. Let's assume for a second that you might put out another Marcus Nispel Nispel movie that came out in the early 2000s. Let's just assume. Again, I'm gonna be creamed if I don't ask about this. There was another movie that came out in the same franchise in 2006 that's technically a prequel. Um, do you have any interest in that?
I might.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And let me here's let me. I understand you can't. I understand that you can't just say all this stuff outwardly. And this is kind of a weird question to ask it. I'm not trying to be tricky, but have we seen the biggest titles for horror fans from Arrow in 2025 so far? Or do you think that we're going to get something down the road this year that people are going to be like, oh my God? Not taking away
Well,
from the Friday the 13th that you've put out this year.
there are definitely two that you may have just talked about. But I'm trying to think other horror titles. I mean, we have a lot of really great titles coming. We have a good slate for October, which I think will make fans happy. Yeah, no, I think man, I can't. I'm trying to think of what's in the rest of the year. I mean, believe it or not, we are almost completely scheduled for 2026 too. So that should give you an idea of what's going to be coming from Arrow and how much we're definitely supporting and are out there championing physical media.
Cliff, this is something again. You may not have an answer to this just because this may still be in discussions on how to do it. But don't worry, this is something that's public. Another thing, people were like, Christian, please ask him about this. 2 things about Creepshow 2. Technically 3. This is one I want to ask. I'm wondering, obviously that announcement was showing new 4K titles, so it's going to be a 4K. But people were wondering if that was going to be US and UK, or just because some of those titles clearly are just going to be UK, like Rawhead Rex, like The Thief, etc. But Creepshow 2 is a different situation.
Yeah, I think it's both. And then again, it wouldn't really matter since the 4K disc is playable in all regions. But I'm pretty sure it's both US and UK. I think we have US. Yeah, we have US rights now. So yeah, it's both. Yeah.
The second part of that question is, again, you may not have an answer for this, but a lot of people are like,
know about the framing issue? That's what I've seen online quite a bit. I guess the original master was not framed properly, but yeah, we know about it. I mean, we all read the boards too, so that will be corrected.
Perfect. Another question, a silly question, but again, as collectors, we love our chunky boxes. Is there any sort of design for the box set release of that already? Is it going to be identical to the way it looked before? Are you going to go with a different design altogether?
Yeah, it's actually too far out. I think it's like a December title, so I don't think any of that's been decided yet.
And another thing, Michael Felsher announced basically a sequel to his Just Desserts documentary.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that's kind of involved with you guys with this release, or is it totally separate, its own different thing?
Yeah, totally separate. Yeah. I mean, in a lot of times, people go, well, why don't you have the documentary on your release? And, it would cost additional money to include that. I was able to license more brains from my friend Michael Perez for Return of the Living Dead. And basically, that had been out there for a while. But like for Jason Goes to Hell, I mean, a lot of people are aware of Adam Marcus's documentary, and we would have loved to include it, but he wants to take it out and probably do a theatrical and its own video release. So something like that. If it's too new, the filmmakers really don't want us to put it in our release, even if it would make perfect sense.
Excellent. Okay, I think I covered that. Just making sure nobody's going to scream at me when I get done.
And you know, Adam was involved in our release of Jason Goes to Hell, and he approved the master and so forth, but he didn't do any new extra because, you know, he's got a documentary, and you know, he wants that to be in the forefront. We totally understand, you know.
People were asking about this is the last time we talked. One of the things people, again, and we were kind of talking with your history with Scream Factory in this sense, and I think people love this movie so much they still just want me to ask about it. We talked about Day of the Dead, and you kind of told me that nobody knows where the elements for any of it are at this point. Do you have, just for the fans, do you have any update at all on that you could give us, or is everything still MIA?
Yeah, I mean, nothing can still be found. I mean, Shout is looking for the elements as we speak, and you know, they're gone. You know, I certainly hope, you know, they weren't thrown away at some point, but they're probably somewhere just mislabeled. And but my friend at Shout is Jeff Rowland is really out there looking everywhere he possibly can for any film element, and Second Sight has the rights in the UK, and they're looking for it as well, but nobody's found it.
Cliff,
hold on to your Blu-ray, that might be the only version you'll ever see.
Yep, I remember I did a video about that basically not too long after we talked, and I basically said keep your Blu-ray. Cliff, as you know, Arrow has, in their span of the company, has had a lot of the most legendary titles out there, especially when it comes to Mr. Romero's catalog. We talked about how expensive licensing Dawn of the Dead is. Do you think there will ever be a breaking point with that where Arrow could potentially get any, or does it cost too much just to talk to that guy?
No, I mean, Arrow actually, I found out recently, had a lot of discussions with Mr. Rubenstein on trying to get the rights, probably before Second Sight got them. And yeah, he's, you know, I've dealt with him. He's a tough cookie, and I don't know. If you don't have the Second Sight release out there, folks, you might want to buy it, because, you know, I don't, you know that anybody's ever going to want to try and work something out with that guy. He's just so difficult.
He thinks very, very highly of that film.
Well, he thinks very highly of everything he's done.
Yeah. All right, so there's that. A couple more things, Cliff. I don't want to keep you too long. We're gonna.
Okay.
Okay. So, I was kind of a little surprised by this. I got a 4K of Reanimator, and if you would have told me a year ago that it wasn't going to have a big letter A on the spine, I would have been like, well, really? I mean, to me, that was kind of as surprising as Scream Factory letting go of Texas Chainsaw 2. I mean, is there any intel to that? I'm not taking anything away from what the company, I believe I forget the name of them, Ignite might be the name. Yeah. I thought they did a journeyman's job on it, but kind of surprised.
You know, it was probably right as I was joining the company, but yeah, we were a little shocked when we didn't get our rights renewed, and it wasn't for lack of trying. I think Brian Usna started his own label, and so I just assumed that he was going to release it on his own label. And then when I saw Ignite Films announce it, I was just kind of shocked, because to that point they had only done one disc, which was Invaders from Mars. So yeah, it was very surprising. But yeah, I heard it's really good. I haven't bought it. I think you were talking about this in one of your videos. It's like, Does everything need to be 4K? No, it really doesn't. And, I will enjoy watching the old Arrow disc, just as much as I would enjoy watching this new one, which is kind of priced a little high. But yeah, I passed on it.
And Cliff, yeah, and that's fair. It's like I do think that a lot of times, and even when I do, and respectfully, even sometimes with some of the stuff I get from Arrow that might have been on Blu-ray from another company, I'll say this is definitely a great looking 4K. But have you noticed when it comes to picture, I mean, a lot of these, it's like sometimes when, like, especially with Arrow putting out their own stuff, it's like if you guys do these 4K scans, whatever the technical term is on Blu-ray, I mean, they look phenomenal to begin with. Sometimes the jump can only you understand. Like sometimes it can only be that much different.
No, I totally agree. And, everybody wants everything in 4K. And, the 4K audience is still rather small. Like you can sell more Blu-rays than you can a 4K disc. And so, you really have to, do your due diligence and factor in the extra costs of going to 4K. And, that's why a lot of us are still out here doing Blu-rays, because we're not always sure that we'll be able to make our money back with 4K, because, the transfer is more expensive. The authoring is more expensive. Manufacturing is more expensive. And people, sometimes are online complaining about prices, but, all of this costs a lot of money. So it's only a major studio that can then turn around and sell it for a low price, because they're also getting revenue from digital and other areas, theatrical re-releases. We don't have any of that a lot of times, especially on studio titles. We don't have that. So we only have one way to recoup our money back from the release. So,
right.
You just have to, make your best decision. But yeah, I mean, I put on Blu-rays on my Sony player, which up-reses them supposedly to 4K, and they do look really quite good. So yeah, there's a really big title that I'm going to be putting out next year, and I know there's going to be a lot of complaining about why isn't it 4K, but just financially, it would make any sense. So,
when you say something like that, I always feel, and there's a lot of times I'm very critical of Scream Factory with stuff that they do practice wise. I'm not asking you to dogpile on with me, but one of the things I always say, for instance, I'm a really big Jean-Claude Van Damme fan, and I'd love to see Arrow do a couple of them, especially like Bloodsport. But anyway, like I reviewed their Time Cop. I thought it looked really good.
Yeah.
But there's nothing on it. And Cliff, my thing is this. I said in this video, I
watched it.
Okay. So Cliff, this is my whole thing. And I have a question for you, but I want to kind of set this up for you. I say in this video, if there's a reason there's nothing on there, if there's some sort of social media person that could put the information out there, we tried, it wasn't possible, we couldn't get anything, optically, it would come out so much better than not saying nothing. My question is, do you agree with that? And when you say something like what you just said, you guys need to understand the amount of cost it would do. You kind of said it like that, but if I wasn't talking to you about this, maybe something like what you just said wouldn't come out. Do you think that that's something that companies should do more of, or do you think it's just as well either way? People are going to complain whether you try to explain or not.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little surprised there wasn't anything on there either. I don't know if something happened, and I can tell you that what is this now, a year and a half later, when I was still at Shout Factory, I was working on that title. It took the company that owns the movie is not Universal. It's a production company. And they didn't have any film elements for it. So I
They
went
own the movie, no elements.
well, exactly.
What the hell?
Sometimes these investors just buy things, and I don't think they do due diligence to make sure. Well, and a lot of times it's because they're investment guys. They don't know anything about film, so they wouldn't know to ask for, these film elements. So I started the work going to Universal because I knew Universal had to have it, since they released it theatrically. So yeah, that thing came out like a year and a half after or more than when I started working on it.
Oh, well, thanks. That's wow. I never would have guessed that.
But I've tried to get Van Damme before, and I know somebody did get him. I don't know if it was Kino or whatever, but he was always kind of hard to get.
Well,
Or spot.
I don't know if this is the same thing I'm referencing that you're thinking of, but there was this really nice media book kind of overseas, maybe it was German release of Bloodsport, where they managed to get him in front of a computer and
Yeah.
did Skype stuff with him. And boy, that release, they got everything. They got the guy that did the script who talked all about buying Frank Duke's book when it got pulled after a week of coming out because every actor that he named in there sued him, saying none of this happened. I need a movie about Frank Dukes, that guy, you know?
Yeah, I mean that's a perfect example of what I said before. It was hard to get him before, but now in this day and age with Zoom and so forth, you could probably get somebody that you couldn't get before.
Mhm. One of the things, Cliff, I wanted to ask about some of the titles that are, I think, when you look at Arrow's library in America, are considered classic titles. Um, the House films, I think 1 and 2 specifically in the States. I think I would imagine those probably sold extremely well, and I know a lot of people would love to see those. Any kind of new release we can. I don't know if the guy is it Jeff Katz, the gentleman that's the star of those movies? Is that his name? That can't be it. It's something else. It's not Jeff Katz. That's somebody totally different. Maybe his name's Jeff. Maybe it's not. The Roger Cobb guy. I don't know if he's still alive. I think he is.
I think so. Yeah.
But anyway, I know a lot of people had messaged me and said, ask him about House if they're ever going to put that to 4K. I'm assuming
Yeah, we don't have any plans at this time.
and another title that is a classic in the library. Now, I don't know if it's sold very well because when you think of Reanimator, I think I think obviously the first one is the title. My personal favorite and one I always try to talk to people about, and I have it, and I get people try to buy it from me all the time, is Bride of Reanimator.
Yeah, we lost both of those. Yeah.
So is that title just completely out of print, or you can only sell a standard release of what you guys have previously had?
I think we can only sell whatever we have until the expiration date. I don't know if it's already come up or whether we have some time. Yeah, I think we lost Society as well.
Wow. Come on, Mr. Hughes. Is Mr. Hughes not trying to suck up all his titles back up and just...
Well, if you start your own label, it makes absolutely sense that you would not renew your titles, but then he ends up giving Reanimator to somebody. So, yeah, who knows?
A couple more, again, I'm sure you probably like Christian. I don't have an answer for stuff like this, but again, it's just the fans that want to know if you can. Some other classic titles people love. Oh, first off, thank you for getting the stuff out there. I'm a Larry Cohen diehard, and any chance I get just to talk about him, I'm always happy. So I'm excited about the stuff. Honestly, it kind of stole the show for me over Cobra, and I believe there was another big title that got announced during that month. I slipped in my mind, but the stuff was the one that I was so excited for that. Another title that's pretty legendary with Arrow is Blood Rage. People love that one. And it's so funny. I got some slipcover on mine that every time I take a picture of it, people are like, you got the slip? Titles like that, Cliff, that has to be when I think of movies like Blood Rage, that's got to be some guy in his late 70s that probably owns that movie that probably isn't even in the movie business. So is that the situation with titles like that?
Yeah, I'm not sure on that one, but I think it is owned by a producer. It's not owned by a studio or anything like that. But Yeah, I mean, I think like really low budget movies like that probably aren't going to, be any better in 4K. So, you know, I don't think we'd do it unless we knew that we could put out something solid because, we don't want to put something out and it doesn't look much better than the Blu-ray did.
It's funny hearing you say that. I'm not poking fun at what you're saying, but like I do find it pretty fun. And I bought it. That Arrow put out Madman on 4K, which is out of focus in parts, which is the Arrow's fault. That's the guy that shot the damn thing, but
Yeah, I think the master already existed, so it was like,
it
hey,
did.
why not? Yeah,
Yeah, I think Vinegar Syndrome went
yeah,
through the trouble.
yeah. So if we're not spending the money on it, then it's okay.
Um, that's another thing. It's like, do you kind of look at titles? I don't know if that's a game plan that you kind of have, but like this is something that comes to my mind when you look at a company in America. You have the luxury of having a company that has, you know, they've got stake in different regions, so to speak, region A's, region B's. Do you kind of look at other companies that are region A's and see, okay, look at that. That sold really well. Maybe we could see about getting that for over the pond, like a Madman. Is that something that you kind of keep your eyes to the ground on?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, a lot of us, especially the acquisition department, are real film lovers. So, when you look at a availability list from an MGM and the apartments on, and it actually says on the availability list, the apartment 4K, Thief 4K. It'd be crazy not to do those titles if, the master exists. I'm sure we would have taken those titles even if we had to pay for the master, just because they're classic.
One or two more questions, Cliff, because I feel like I'm putting you through a deposition here. But
Okay.
um, is there? And I don't know if it's I always have this grandiose vision of like acquisition people all like just it's like almost like the mob. Everybody's fighting to get deals done, and everything is like cutthroat. So I don't know if this is something you can kind of answer, but I'd love it if you could. As a film lover yourself, I'm sure there's titles that you have envisioned. You probably have the entire release envisioned in your head, what it would look like, you're gonna get Michael Gingold to write this up for it, that sort of stuff. What are some titles that in your mind for you would be the absolute perfect releases to do on Arrow?
Well, I mean, I always say Suspiria because it's one of my favorite movies. But Synapse did an amazing job, so I don't have to worry about that. I mean, the other one that I would love to do that everybody's been trying to get is Inferno, but since Disney has some control in that movie, it's probably never going to come out because Disney just when I joined Arrow, we had talked to Disney a few times when I was a child, and that's how we did. Oh God, what's the name of that kid show? Drawing a blank. But I've gone to Disney and said, could we work out a deal? And they just don't even want to talk about it because you brought up recently Barbarian, and I did go to Disney and asked for that title and the Hellraiser remake recently because they already have 4K masters on it, so new masters would not have to be created, because that's one reason Disney doesn't want to do deals with anybody is they want to be in charge of the film transfer. So you would be at their whim to do the transfer if you could work out a deal with them. So I thought, well, here are two titles that already have 4K masters. You don't have to do anything. We'll give you a bunch of money and you just give us the rights. And they just said no.
But don't you kind of scratch your head that they put out Prey?
No, because that's an active franchise for them, and even more so now that there are two new movies coming. So yeah, that wasn't a surprise. I'm sure they really didn't want to do it. I can't remember if they had signed the Sony deal. You know, all of their home video releases are basically done by Sony now.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I could see Sony pushing for that. You know, I'm sure that's why we have Tombstone. I'm sure that's why we're going to have Rocky Horror Picture Show, because if Disney had their way, they wouldn't put them out at all. So, you know, all they care about is Hulu and Disney Plus.
So when you bring up Sony, do they have stake in film releases, so to speak? Is that what you're saying with that?
No, basically Sony does their, I believe the way the deal is structured is Sony does their distribution and sales and manufacturing for Disney's titles. Disney one didn't want to have anything to do with home video, so they basically gave it to another company.
My mind instantly went to something horror related when you mentioned Sony, and I don't know if I don't know if you guys are involved in this at all, or if this is just some sort of Sony release. Tom Savini has come out publicly and already said that he says Sony is doing this. He claimed that they're going back and they scraped up a bunch of hold on, I think I froze. All right, am I back? I'm sorry, did I freeze for a second?
No.
Okay. He claimed that Sony let him go back and get a bunch of footage, and they're recutting his Night of the Living Dead, and they're going to make it like about 60% of what his original storyboard vision was. Now, he's already said this publicly, so my question is this something that Arrow's doing for the release itself, or?
No, we're not involved in it at all. I mean, Sony... You know, Sony really still supports its home video division and sees a reason for it, and it's great. And we get lots of great titles because they are totally behind physical media. So I'm sure they're releasing that themselves.
Okay.
I'm about to close a deal with Sony, but it's just for, you know, a few titles.
And I guess my last question is not really a question, but I do want to just kind of say this vaguely. Let's just say, and I'm going to be respectful because I not in a million years I wanted you to try to get you in any sort of trouble. Let's just say, for instance, hypothetically speaking, you guys put out 2 horror films this year that came out in the early to mid 2000s, and one of them happens to be a remake of what I consider to be the greatest horror film ever made. I think a lot of people would love those to be deluxe releases that are what we call the chunky boxes. I'm just saying that. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Just hypothetically speaking, Cliff.
Yeah.
If you were to just announce a title casually that you guys you're already working on behind the scenes, who knows? It could be you could theoretically hold one of these in your hand a week from now. Would you really get in trouble? And I'm not asking you to say anything per se, but would you get in trouble, or would you get a smack on the wrist, or what? How does that work?
I think the lovely Louise at Arrow would not be happy with me if I announced a title, so I'm going to be quiet.
Cliff, I think it's going to be a great year for Arrow. I'm excited, man. I mean, this Warner deal is big for a lot of horror fans.
No, I mean, it's this year is great through December. Next year, I think, is even stronger than this year. Yeah, it's a good time to be a physical media fan. You know, some people might have to get a second job, you know. Or sell blood.
Let me ask you this really quick, Cliff, before we wrap. Theoretically speaking, just give me one title. Give me one title. If you were putting together your ultimate sequel box set to the Enter the Video Store, what would be one of those Empire titles and to put in there, and why would it be Ghost Town? I know you love Ghost Town.
I do, and you know,
I was just guessing. I'm right. Do you love Ghost Town?
You know, I'm old enough that I actually I may have said this last time, but I went to the grindhouses and I saw all of these Charles Band Empire pictures. I actually went to a sneak preview back in the day when they used to have sneak previews at theaters, and we didn't know what we were seeing. And we went into the theater, and this movie Reanimator comes on. My friend and I knew about it because we were Fango people and stuff. And literally sitting in the row next to me was Stuart Gordon, his wife, Barbara Crampton. I mean, the whole cast was across from me in the aisle, and saw a sneak preview of Reanimator. But yeah, I think I saw like Prison, and I mean, we went to the scariest movie theaters in San Francisco. That you know, they didn't put the lights up, and that was probably good because you know, they were scary theaters to be in. I saw most of those things in the theater. It was great.
I don't think I've ever talked to somebody that actually saw Reanimator in the theater, because I think people have this misconception that these were hits, and a lot of those movies, all of them tanked, but Charlie got all the money for the Vestron deals.
Yeah, you know, I lived in the Bay Area at that time. I'm not sure that Reanimator ever did come to theaters there. I mean, maybe in San Francisco, but not where I lived. And I managed movie theaters for like 9 years. So, yeah, it was really weird. I like found a book the other day because I would keep a log at the theater and write down the box office receipts because we would have to call them in at the end of the night, you know, before the computer age. Mm-hmm. And I found the book the other day, and I'm going through it. I'm like, holy shit, I played Nightmare on Elm Street. I couldn't even remember that I did, you know, but yeah, we played it for like 3 or 4 weeks, and I actually played part 3. So,
no kidding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool. Cliff, listen, I want to thank you for hanging out. You're gonna learn your lesson. And whenever you email me to check back in, I'm gonna be like, hey, can we interview again? Yeah. Eventually you're gonna be like, I can't email this kid.
No, I enjoy talking, so anytime.
And I appreciate you. I didn't, you know, I put YouTube videos out. I'm never aware of who's watching them, but it's flattering that you check my stuff out every now and then.
I do. I gotta
watch what I say.
I really got a kick out of the Shat Factory one you did the other day.
There you have it. So guys, you know, I think we can all be excited. Sounds like Arrow's gonna be kicking some ass this year. Cliff is the man. He is the Warner Brothers man over there.
Maybe.
He's got the deals locked in. He said he's going to check on Freddy versus Jason, everybody.
Yeah, I will. And the Nightmare remake. Why not?
I'm just saying, you know just as well as I do. People can shit on. Listen, I'm with you, Cliff. Out of the big 4 remakes, my least favorite's Elm Street.
Yeah.
I mean, but I would still, when I say I would buy it in a heartbeat, I would buy it in a heartbeat, because I know it would be a sick ass release. And I know by the way, whoever's doing the art for those releases, people always shit on artwork. I have not heard nobody has come up to me. Maybe you've seen it online, but I have a decent number of people that talk to me. Everybody says, I love the artwork that they're doing for these Friday releases. I mean, that split masks, it's fantastic. I mean, it really is. The Jason X one is gorgeous.
Art is so subjective, you know. It's more than anything, maybe even more than movies, you know. You see, you know, Jackson Pollock paintings, and you go, what? I don't get it, you know. So that I always try to put out of my head when you're reading online, because, you know, our art is very subjective. Sometimes we love it, sometimes we hate it. So, and I think what I love the most about Arrow is that I think they use a lot of artists that are very creative. So they kind of, you know, at Shout, we often did what everybody refers to as the floating heads. And, you know, after a while, that gets kind of tiresome. So it's kind of nice when you give it a different take, and it's a little bit more artistic and cool. So I really love that about Arrow.
Yeah, and last thing, Cliff, it's not a question, but I feel as a fan of horror, and maybe I'm sentimental about this time because I'm 33, so the mid to late 2000s, I lived at the movie theater because I lived in a small town where there's nothing to do but go to the movies. All those horror remakes from that area at that time, 2003 to 2011, 12, there's gonna be a renaissance of people just watching those again and saying, "God, you know what? The Rob Zombie films really ain't that bad." And stuff like my point is,
I totally agree with you. I think,
whatever you can get from that. I'm sorry to cut you off. I just want to make sure I get this out. And
yeah.
I'd love to hear what you have to say. All those movies, I don't care if it's the damn April Fool's Day remake, any of those titles, I think they'd be sellers.
I agree with you. I think those movies will find, more fans as time goes by. Like, I mean, 976 Evil was like, totally a forgotten movie when it came out, but I mean, it had such a base that even Sony put it out on Blu-ray themselves, and I was like, really?
Yep.
Oh my God. So,
Then it went out of print, and people are paying big money for it because they want it so bad.
Yeah. Yeah. So everything, has its fans for sure.
I don't care what nobody says. If Arrow Video put out the Night of the Demons remake with old Eddie Furlong, people would flip out because I know a lot of people, they love that remake. It's fun.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the Black Christmas, the first Black Christmas remake's good. I'd love to do both of those.
That's a touchy subject with people, that Black Christmas remake, because they feel like every year is going to be the year, and then it comes and it goes, and no announcement of it.
Yeah.
So, all right, Cliff, I could go on for hours about this.
Okay, well, we can do it again soon.
Absolutely, man. Maybe later this year, towards the end of the year, we might be able to talk about some particularly big horror films if they come out this year, hopefully. You got me excited, man. You got me excited. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is this video. Everybody, please drop a comment below and thank Cliff for giving us his time. I know a lot of, I'm sure you get DMs and messages all the time from people asking. You may even get people that DM you and say, "When's my order shipping?" I don't know. Maybe.
That has happened, by the way.
What do you say to something like that? Let me go look.
Call customer service. Yeah.
But listen, no, seriously, guys, everybody in the comments, if you can, just thank Cliff for his time. And listen, he's reading these comments. If there's anything I forgot to ask it, and then maybe I'm not going to bug him, but maybe down the road I'll write it, I'll save it down, and we'll circle back.
Yeah.
But
definitely.
For everybody out there, thank y'all for watching this, and we'll see y'all next time.
Bye.
Huge giant thank you to all of my Patreon supporters. Without you guys, this would not be possible. To get behind the scenes photos, videos, music, private live streams, and much more, you can subscribe to my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Thank you to my patrons.